the things that we present this morning, we pray, are according to your will. And so we pray that we may be in tune with your Spirit, that we may get the message that you intend for us to receive. I pray you bless each one here, that they might be tired, that they might have good fellowship, and that we will rejoice in worshiping you. These things I pray in Jesus' name, amen. Okay, your worship this morning was wonderful. What a powerful testimony. And it's been 200 years since Joseph Smith first laid eyes on the Book of Mormon. And I just wanted to have us get a better appreciation for the book, which was a great start this morning. So this is just a bunch of things thrown together, that maybe some things you don't know about the Book of Mormon. The day before, or the night before Joseph saw the plates, the messenger came to him. And I'm going to tell you just a few words of what the messenger said. For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and shall all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall lead them neither root nor branch. And he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to the fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. And so my topic for this is a marvelous work and a wonder. And a couple of Sundays ago, my son said, you know what the difference is between a marvelous work and a wonder and a miracle? That's an interesting question. And I realized if you don't thoroughly understand the workings of the Lord, things are miracles. But if you see a pattern, ask Tammy, she can tell you. The way he's worked in their lives has been a marvelous work and a wonder, just a pattern all the way through their lives. And so this is how the Book of Mormon came forth too. And it's interesting that the Lord's timing is perfect always. And the coming forth of the Book of Mormon, there's many, I'll just tell you several, many instances where they were on high holy days. Rosh Hashanah, one year when he went to visit the plates, he couldn't take them yet. And another year it was Yom Kippur. When he got them, it was Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Trumpets. And it's just another thing that shows God's workings with what was going on. Joseph Smith said that he translated by the gift and power of God. But the Book of Mormon itself, in the preface, said, it was translated, Royal Skousen, a Mormon who's done a lot of deep research into the book itself, I have concluded there are important findings resulting from the critical text project of the Book of Mormon, which he worked on. First, that Joseph Smith received an English language text, word for word. And let me testify of that. I worked on the Restored Covenant edition of the Book of Mormon, on the cross-references and then on the index. That was all my work. And no matter which way I twisted and turned that book, there's no doubt in my mind it was given word by word. And that's why we can find all the Hebrew poetry patterns and all the wonderful things that are in there now. So if anybody says differently, don't believe them. Second, that the original English language text itself was very precisely constructed. And I wanted to share with you, it's been 193 years, at the end of March, which is where we are, look at this, that the Book of Mormon printing first came out. And actually, it was in a Mormon church just like this in Independence, Missouri, that we had, for a few years till COVID, the restoration groups, the Community of Christ, the Mormons, the Temple Lot, would get together and have a Book of Mormon day. And this one, we came late from Lamoni, so we weren't late, but later than everybody else. and we sat right in the front row in front of the speaker. And the first talk was how the Book of Mormon came, how it was printed, and I thought, this is going to be fun, you know. Actually, it was the most interesting talk of the whole weekend. And the Book of Mormon could not have been printed until the time it was. Before that, they had little tiny printing presses. They were scattered around, but they weren't very big. And the heavy one they had here, the only way they could get it to Palmyra, New York, you couldn't get it over land. It had to be in the Erie Canal. So the Erie Canal had to be that far along, or there had never been a printing press in Palmyra. And it's interesting, too, that although Grodin bought this bookstore, or the printing press, he bought at about a year, he had it about a year, and the man that owned it before was the one that set the type for the Book of Mormon. And you don't have 47 million trillion letters, and so you have to reset each page and then print it all. And it talked about the millions of pages for the copies they had. It was just amazing. And the paper, until the time of the Book of Mormon, they had no paper this size, 21 by 30, which could print 16 pages at a time. Before, you'd have to do a page at a time. And it's just amazing. He went on with 5 main reasons. I'm just giving you a couple of, there's no way on earth the Book of Mormon could have come forth before it did. I think this is interesting. The binding and the color, everything about the Book of Mormon was designed to be similar to the Bible, to emphasize its importance. Okay? And it was written in paragraph form, and you will find, if you read it in paragraph form, it reads differently than it is in our versification. And if you read it in the Restored Covenant edition, which is in a poetry form, that reads different. I've given out a bunch of them. And when I do, I'll tell people, you'll see things in there you never saw before. And you'll understand things you didn't. And I know if people open their book, because they'll come back all excited, you know what? I've seen things in there I never saw before. Just because of the structure of it. A subtopic for this presentation is that Joseph Smith could not have written the Book of Mormon, just because, first of all, it couldn't have been printed until it was. First, I read, one of the things, it came from the Spalding manuscript. I read that. It's like comparing an adamant cartoon to an amazing ant, a National Geographic book for kids, There's no comparison. If anybody looked at it at all, they'd say that was ridiculous. This is one of the famous theologians. He said, I paged through this American Bible, wondering how many Protestants had even seen a copy or read a verse out of any of the 15 books. Wherever these auxiliary scriptures came from, whatever they were, they surpassed in magnitude and content the most extravagant expectations. No Vermont schoolboy wrote this, and no Presbyterian minister tinkered with the pages. This is a non-believer. I want to quote from you from Mosiah talking to his sons. O Mosiah, I would that you should remember that these sayings are true, and that these records are true. Also the plates of Nephi, which contain the records of our fathers until now, and they are true. Search them diligently. That's his testimony. I wanted to mention, too, the waterfalls in the background. When the last time I was in Palenque, they found a new site up on a hill. I was with the Graceland group and with my cousin's son. And as we started up, we found this fabulous stream that just all the way down was waterfall after waterfall. Some of the kids had to take their shoes off and just get it. It's just beautiful. I thought, man, this could be the waters of Mormon. If I wanted waters, this is the place I'd choose. Okay. I want to talk to a minute about my friend Angie. She and her husband and mine went to the University of Illinois at the same time, and she was our women's leader. She knows I tell this. She did know. She's gone. That she drove me nuts. A detail person. We had a covered dish dinner, and we spent a half an hour discussing how thick the slice of ham. I'm just sitting there, cut it, just cut it. But after we left the university, I hadn't heard anything from her in 15 years. And then she started printing Hebrewisms she saw in the Book of Mormon. She went to the university and studied Hebrew, and she was so good at it. I have letters from her major professor that said, in my 30 years of teaching, I've never had a student like Angela. And so she was able to talk at National Bible Scholars meetings and stuff. Here she is at Qumran. Israel invited her over twice to work on the Dead Sea Scrolls. And in the edge of my Book of Mormon, 2 Nephi chapter 2, verse 2, 2 Nephi chapter 2, verse 20, it says, "And that which shall be written by the fruit of thy loins," the people over here in America, is the Book of Mormon people, "and the fruit of the loins of Judah," the Bible, "shall grow together." And with her understanding all the Hebrew, she pulled them together. She said, this is a Hebrew book. And for years, she was the only person saying this. Mormons were quoting her. Finally, they caught up to her. But she proves it. And these are some of the things she said, why Joseph couldn't write it. "My belief that as a whole committee of Jewish scholars and rabbis, let alone one young, educated man, could have not produced this book in 1830 for 3 reasons. 1, I completed a 77-page master's thesis on Hebrew sentence structure in about the same length of time. I know it would be humanly impossible to complete a written work more than 10 times that length in that period. 2, the study of Hebrew poetry by scholars is still in its infancy in 1830. That's an understatement. Some of the poetic structures in the Book of Mormon weren't even identified in the Bible until the 1940s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. 3, only since 1950 have biblical scholars shown increased interest in identifying homiletic midrash in the Bible. Not until 1991 were ancient Hebrew sermon patterns identified for the first time in the Book of Mormon. I'm convinced that the strongest internal evidence we have today for the authenticity of the Book of Mormon is the Hebrew literary structure." And then she goes on to share another experience. In a lecture, and this is a picture of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, Professor Chaim Rabin, president of the Hebrew Language Academy at the university, wanted to illustrate the frequent use of the conjunction "and" in the Hebrew Bible. Rabin read a passage in English, and an LDS student recognized that the verse was not from the Bible, but from the Book of Mormon. Rabin then announced to the class that he was reading from the English Book of Mormon because it contained better examples of this usage than the English Bible. The Book of Mormon was translated from the Hebrew language. And we say it was written in another language because it took less characters to write and less space. But they both read right to left. I'm doing it backwards to you, right to left. And so this is a picture of the old Hebrew about that time. And so Angela said, every page in the Book of Mormon is just full of Hebrewisms. And I remembered at the time I looked at my book and I said, where? I don't see them. This is just some sentence structures. You'll notice in the verse of some of them, the first word is "and." We're going to talk about "and" for a minute. With the different colors of the different styles. We all know when it came to pass, right? Look how many times it's used more in the Book of Mormon, and I know when they were translating the Bible, they took some of them out. But still, it shows the Book of Mormon has more Hebrew usage of that word than any other scriptures, and a lot of the new Bibles don't have it at all. Another one, though, I didn't know about, and this came out in 1987, and now was a standard opening during Old Testament times in the area of Iran, which is east of the Holy Land. Particularly at the beginning, when they first came over to the Americas. Look at the chapters in Nephi that starts with, "and now." It's something you wouldn't realize until you heard about it. But there it is. I never noticed all those "and nows." Very Hebrew, particularly from that time period. A couple other examples. Remember about the Zoramites getting up on their tower or their for their Ramyamptom prayers. The Semitic language for Ram means a high place. So the Book of Mormon talks about the Ramyamptom, which you see here, Hill Ramah, again, a hill up high. And in Israel, Ramallah, it means the heights. So it means the same thing. I remember in 1997, they had found 97 different types of Hebrew poetry writing. And here are just some examples of them. 97 different kinds. It's amazing. And I'm sure you've all heard of chiasms by now. And the Book of Mormon starts with one. This is the one it starts with, which is telling us the center point is always the most important, the one they want to emphasize. Lehi is saying, hey, although I used Egyptian, I had the learning of the Jews. That was the most important. But one reason I included this slide, because at the top is demonic Egyptian. And I have a friend, I'll talk about her later, Mary Jo, that she wanted to translate the Joseph Smith characters. And first she studied some hieroglyphs in Egypt, and that wasn't it. And then she studied Maya for a long time, till she was known with all the world-famous Mayanists. And, one I met in Philadelphia, and I said, I'm from Lamona. I said, oh, do you know Mary Jo? He was the keynote speaker, and I'm thinking, wow. But then she figured demonic Egyptian, and for 25 years she tried months ago by with nothing, but 25 years she worked on it, till she could translate 42, I think, words. Do we know kind of what it says? Back to chiasms. This is just emphasizing that always the center point is the most important part. And it can be whole books, whole chapters. Can't think of his name right now. Learned that the book of Isaiah is one whole chiasm, which proves that Isaiah did it all and not somebody else, or the chiasm wouldn't have been there. Okay, I was talking about the characters. And Tammy, this was the week before your wedding when I got this book and all of Angela's library. And I wanted it set up in my center before the wedding because her mom was adamant against the Book of Mormon. But I saw this one book and I set it aside for after the wedding. It's written by Wade Brown, a Mormon. And I loved his introduction. I thought, this got to be a good guy. And he was trying to read the characters too. And he was talking on the phone. He had them all over his wall in his study and everything. Talking on the phone, wife upstairs on the phone to their daughter. And he thought, these jumped out at him, looks like a chiasm. And here it is. And you can see, I'll point out a couple where they kind of match. See how they match? I'll do the next to the first. And then you can see the number ones, they're the same. I thought, even I can see this is a chiasm. And I showed it to Mary Jo. I gave her the book. I said, look at it. She got so excited. And she's one that drove me nuts because she wouldn't let me tell anything less than 100%. But if it was, So And the next time I saw her was a concert at Graceland, and she wiggled her way all through the crowd to get to me. And she said, I even wrote Wade Brown. I was so excited about this. So the big characters at the top are one complete chiasm. And the bottom one is not. It's just part of a chiasm. And so we kind of know what the bottom part that's missing is because it's chiastic. But here's the top part. I marked out the chiasms, the match, and you can see. I mean, anyway, you don't have to read the language to see it. It's amazing. So I want to show you the first one because finally she said, okay, you can talk about it a little. And I had this slide, and after I projected, I said, Mary Jo, people can see that up there. They're going to know, because she had it written above it. She said, okay, go ahead and tell them. So this is the first one in the book. And they don't use vowels, just like Hebrew doesn't. It says Mormon. It's the first word is Mormon. She said the names were easy to find. But then there's two purple lines, so it represents something more than N. Remember back here, there's a line in front of each one of those. That's something else. But anyways, she said, oops, one fell too far. The second one means I, me, or mine. And so it starts out, I'm Mormon. Enough that anybody that understood this at all could read it. I looked a little further, and look how many times it's used at the first part of the Book of Mormon. And in the abridged part, where they shortened it, when you abridge, it's not there except like in Helaman's letter to Horan, which is the longest of any letter in any scriptures. And I thought, how would Joseph Smith to know to do it, but when he got to the abridged part, to not do it? It just, again, shows the book is authentic. And I complained to Mary Jo about this, because, again, it wasn't 100%. I'm saying, Mary Jo, you can say stronger. But anyways, I'm going to read it like I would say it. The large characters were written to whomever would translate the records, because the Urim and Thummim, the two stones which refer to light, only appear there. The characters also express appointments of the high priest or prophet in working with the two stones. Nephi's plates of gold are mentioned in the smaller characters. And that's what it's generally about. And if you look in Ether, there's a small chapter written to Joseph Smith. I'm sure about second verse, he's starting to get his goosebumps like, he's writing to me. Whoa. And so this was not uncommon. So I made up this plate. An actual artifact can be faked, and it's not as strong as evidence as the Hebrew style of the Book of Mormon, which was set in stone. I had a good little pigeon. She talked about them finding a headbound way after building the road, after taking 50 truckloads of rock and dirt. It had 9 of the 10 commandments on it in Hebrew. It ended up in the basement of a museum, and finally I think they gave it to her son because it couldn't be authentic. But you can't deny what's in the book. Remnants of the Book of Mormon language. The Maya dictionary from ancient times had 20,000 words. An expert said the only currently intelligible system of writing in the New World capable of expressing the whole of human thought, which is what the Book of Mormon is, right? And I'm going to show you remnants of the Book of Mormon in the Maya language. Na, at the end of a word, means several things, and I've just shown you a couple. Head or leader. And remember when Ammon cut off the arms and they brought him in and showed him, the sermons called him Rabbanah, and the Book of Mormon even translates it, which is being interpreted powerful or great king. If you'd have mentioned that to any Mayan, they would have known too what they were talking about. One other example is their money. The biggest are the best. A shum of gold was twice the value of a seon. I'm going to say, but a limnah was the value of all of them. It fits with the Mayan and my language. This is, we met the understudy of this Don Ponte. He was like 104 or 5. And he had this pot. And he was teaching this lady from the United States because none of his people wanted to learn how to be a shaman and how to know about all the medicines and everything. But how he diagnosed people was with his sastun. Tun means not stone. Sas means light. He had a stone of light. Rosita said I could never make it work, but I thought that's a good connection with the Book of Mormon. This was a discovery by one of the top epigraphers in the world in Germany, Nikolai Gruber. And this is from a pot in 700 to 750 AD. And he said the rolled up curtain here, here's the rolled up curtain, indicates they were inside a palace. And the two traders on the left have come and are offering bundles of their wares. A scribe and Chillenbaum, and you can tell the scribe by the hat he has on, he's even got a brush sticking out of it. And the interpreter sat on the floor in front of the traders from the far. And King, and he translated it, and I've got it marked up here. I could read it studying Maya myself. Layman. And the area is around the area of Tekol, which is where my pendant's from. Amazing. Now, the Nephites called their kings Nephi, no matter what they were. I would assume the Lamanites did too. And so even, this is during the end times of the Nephites, they had King Laman. So that's pretty cool. Oh, I forgot the king out. And here, yeah, I watched my little arrow come in and then circled, that's the area where they found the pot that had that. Okay, the Book of Mormon contains Hebrew customs. This is one I read quite a few times and never caught on. When Alma went to Monaha, and he was rejected, he was leaving, and the Spirit told him to go back, and he met Amulek, and Amulek took him in, and it came to pass that Alma ate bread, and he was filled. And he blessed Amulek in his house, and he gave thanks unto God. When Angela was at Qumran, the Israelis that were eating there, and she said, particularly if they had bread, which the Book of Mormon mentions, they said their prayer blessing after the meal instead of before, which is just kind of very subtly there in the Book of Mormon, but any Hebrew that read it. And when Angela talked at these national conferences, the Protestants just like ho-hum. But the rabbis were right up front afterwards, excited. They recognized things like this, and it was true. This is a small thing, but just another support. Ancient Israel military leaders kept records, and you'll notice some of these discoveries are like 87, which wasn't that far back. Laban, who had records, was also in charge of at least 50 soldiers. It fits. You know, Joseph Smith never wrote in anything that since then didn't fit. I like this one. Have you ever said I'm beside a river or water? We say river. The desert dwellers often saw rivers of sand, and so they'd just be during the rainy season, the commencement of the first year of the reign of Zedekiah, when the wadis would be filled with spring runoff. Again, authenticates the Book of Mormon. Another one, the Dead Sea Scrolls and Lehi's altar and the sacrifice in the wilderness. The Old Testament tells us, then there shall be a place which the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. And at that designated location, all the sacrifices and offerings were to be made. However, when they found one of the Qumran scrolls, it said, You shall not slaughter a clean ox or sheep or goat in all your towns near my temple within a distance of 3 days' journey. Nay, but inside my temple you shall slaughter it. However, the Book of Mormon doesn't get very far along till it says, when he had traveled 3 days in the wilderness, he pitched his tent, and he built an altar of stones, and he made an offering unto the Lord, and gave thanks unto the Lord. And all these small details that we skim over like 3 days. I mean, how important is that? Everything in there is very important. You know, and if you don't understand it, maybe you need to ask. Burning incense in the Near East and in Mesoamerica. They used the periodical temple rites to incense holy objects and divination, in the New Year's renewal ceremony to accompany sacrifices, and in both cultures the rising smoke represented prayers going to heaven. Not only that, the strongest examples of Guatemala date to 500 BC, which, after a long history, soon after that date went into disuse in the Near East, which again sets the time period it fits. Okay, let's look at the ancient Maya. The Native Americans up here count time and seasons by moons, the years by winters, division of days by sleeps, and that was enough for them. Not the Book of Mormon people. Even until the 4th day of the 7th month, which is in the 10th year, and they to this day have a person that's all the job is to keep track of what day it is. And this is how their cycles worked. They have an 11-day cycle, a 20-day lunar cycle, and it takes 50 years to go once around this wheel. And and then this is the beginning, because this is like number 1 here and number 1 here. It just happened to be. So let's look at the classic Maya long count math was based on 20. Ours is based on 10. And I'm not going to go into this very deeply, but a tune was a 360-day year with 20 days. I showed you the circle. K-tune is 20 tunes. Back tune is 20 K-tunes. O-tune is 5 years. Prophecies were made for the next 5 years. So Samuel, and 400 years, one back tune, shall not pass away before I will cause that they shall be smitten. For 5 years, one hotun, more cometh, then cometh the Son of God. Prophecy in 5 years. Omni, and Corianumber dwelt with them for the space of 9 moons, one Tolkien. The Nephites in 400 years, again, one back tune, from the time of Jesus Christ manifests himself unto them, shall dwell in unbelief. Moroni bids us farewell just after the first K-tune of this final back tune. And more than 420 years have passed away since the sign was given of the coming of Christ. It fits. I like this one. Teancum. I remember one of the first times I read it, I read Teancum come in, he killed the leader of the armies. And then a little while later I read he went in and killed him and he was killed. And I thought, what? I thought he just read he lived. Anyways, he did it twice. But this one, I like. On the 26th year of the reign of Judges, when the Lamanites worked, they were at battle. On the first morning of the first month, to us it would be January 1st, they found Amaleki, was dead in his own tent. When the Lamanites saw this, they were affrighted. Usually just whoever was second in charge would take over and they'd continue their battles. Why were they afraid? In the ancient Near Eastern culture, the New Year's Day was when the king would sally forth to demonstrate his vitality and liveliness to successfully rule for another year. It was like a divine foreshadowing of a prosperous year. A dead king was a sure sign of a disastrous future. And we know, I'm not going to read this, I don't want to, but for a while then they just battled continuously. And there was a hurricane in Honduras, and this little section here, this was already uncovered with hieroglyphs, but a tree blew over and exposed these glyphs here. And there's a place called Dos Pilos. National Graphic was so astonished by all this, they were ready to go to print, and in front of their lead article, they added extra pages just to introduce this. And the Mayan experts said, "We told you wrong." They never say things like that. They said this glyph said that they had this major war. They said it was like a world war at that time. And they were just astonished, but Book of Mormon believers were going, hey, that's what the Book of Mormon told us all along. And they even later had, well, here's the guys that uncovered it, a picture in National Geographic of before, where all the temples have their towers and there no walls. And then they started taking them to make the fences during this world war they were having. Fascinating. I like this one. My husband communicated with Diane some, and I finally met her out in Utah. I just thought this was cute. When the Maya were showing about people talking, they would show like this coming out of their mouths, like this. Here's another one. And I put to include, I think she wants to talk, with the cartoon bubbles. Alma says, and he breathed out many threatenings. Behold, ye have breathed out. And it just fits with the, okay? Another one is their books. I tried to buy one of these, and the seller was never there for me to buy one, a replica. I took my grandkids to an art class to make a book, and I found out it was an accordion book, so I made it with pictures like this. Alma says, or talks about Alma, he went to unfold the scriptures, tell more. We know it, explain, search, declare, but unfold, it's an interesting word. Another thing, comparing North America to South and Central American natives, they had cement. And I was here, I saw this cement, both of them actually, because that fat mask is about, 8 or 10 foot tall, in a town called Lamanai. You have to go by boat about 45 minutes to get there. And they worked with cement. I want to tell you about cement. Down there, they had elevated, wide, all-weather, concrete paved roads. When we first moved to Iowa, one of the church members said her husband worked for the Iowa roads, and Iowa sent some of them down there to study how these roads were made, because they're still, I worked on them, they're still there. They don't have freezing and stuff, but still. Cast in place concrete building materials. And even when I was down there, I could watch the modern days casting in place. Similar to modern structural concrete, Portland cement, 2,100 years before the Europeans discovered it. They used blast furnace technology 1,850 years before the Europeans. They weren't stupid. We should be shouting from the rooftops. These are not Book of Mormon myths, not stories, but real events. The book is real, and the people are real. Absolutely. I would bet my life on it. One time I thought about, you play mind tricks. What I'd bet my life on. I even thought, Tammy, I didn't know Tammy then, but I think would she love me her whole life? Something might happen, maybe not. I expect so, but the one thing I'm sure of is this. So that's my testimony about the Book of Mormon. We'll take a break.